Let's start with the narrative you've been told, that cancer drugs are expensive because they're expensive to make. And the $2.6 billion cost is the pharmaceutical industry's favorite talking point. It's a number repeated in lobbyist brochures, quoted in congressional hearings, and echoed in news headlines. But independent researchers tell a different story. Even counting failures, the median cost is closer to $1 billion, not $2.6 billion. And for drugs that actually reach the market, it can be as low as $300 million. Blockbusters often earn back their costs in as little as a single year. Revlimid, for example, pulled in over $12 billion a year at its peak. Keytruda now sells more than $20 billion annually, on track to hit $30 billion. Once approved, a pill can generate more revenue than many Fortune 500 companies. And here's the twist. Much of the early research isn't even done by the companies themselves. It comes from taxpayer-funded university labs, small biotech startups, or international collaborations. Big Pharma steps in when the risk is lowest, then reaps the rewards. So who's really paying for the innovation? You are. First through public funding, then again at the pharmacy counter. The system is designed so you pay twice, and believe you're lucky to do so. Next comes the myth of precision. Targeted therapy sounds like science fiction turned real, a drug that finds your cancer's unique mutation and disables it. In rare cases, that's partly true. But those mutations are the exception, not the rule. In most cancers, they're found in a tiny fraction of patients, EGFR, ALK, ROS1. Exotic acronyms representing exotic genetics. And even when the mutation is there, tumors evolve. They adapt. They develop resistance. What works in week 1 might fail by month 2. It's like treating a virus that rewrites its code every morning. These drugs don't cure. They delay. Often by weeks, sometimes by months. For most, they don't improve overall survival. The hard truth is that most of the gains in overall cancer survival still come from chemotherapy and from optimizing its combinations, not from these so-called miracle bullets. Ask the question pharma avoids. If this drug is so precise, why does it fail so quickly? Here's another hidden logic. Drug companies fear competition, and they've learned how to avoid it. Patents are meant to protect innovation for 20 years. But by the time a new drug finally launches, much of that time is already gone. So companies build what's called a patent thicket. It works in layers. First comes the compound patent, the molecule itself. By launch day, that patent usually has only 10 years left. So just before approval, companies file a fresh batch of formulation patents. The capsule, the tablet, the way it dissolves. Those filings restart the clock, giving another 20 years of protection. And when those patents edge toward expiration, a new version is rolled out, backed by another round of patents, while the old version quietly disappears from pharmacy shelves. Regulators require generics to prove bioequivalence not to the original formula, but to the version currently on the market. Generics must design a formulation entirely different from the new version on the market, yet still prove bioequivalent to it, a task that is technically difficult, legally risky, and enormously costly. The original formula has no market, and the new one is legally locked away. In theory, this cycle could continue indefinitely. In practice, lawsuits and regulators sometimes cut it short, but even a decade of delay can mean tens of billions in extra revenue. Profit bought not with science, but with paperwork. No matter how much drug companies spend on TV ads, nothing beats influencing doctors. Because in the end, doctors are the real customers. Patients can't choose a prescription drug on their own. Only a doctor can write that order. The money doesn't come out of the doctor's pocket, but their pen decides whether the company makes billions or nothing. That's why the biggest investment isn't in advertising. It's in the frontline sales force. And over time, the salesperson was given a new title, the medical representative. On paper, their role is education, providing doctors with the latest trial results and drug information. But in reality, they are salespeople, trained to shift prescribing habits toward their company's brand. Salesmen are rebranded as medical advisors. Now you might wonder, do doctors actually get a commission for every prescription? Not directly. That would be illegal under the anti-kickback statute. But there are plenty of legal gray zones. A lecture fee, invite a doctor to speak at a conference and pay them handsomely. A consulting contract, put their name on a roster and send regular checks. A sponsored trip, fly them overseas to attend a medical congress, all expenses paid. Even free meals delivered straight to the clinic. None of these payments are called commission, but they are tied to prescribing volume. The more a doctor writes for a brand, the more invitations arrive, the more checks get cut. And the scale is enormous. At their peak, the United States had over 100,000 medical reps, roughly one rep for every 5 practicing physicians. The U.S. government eventually stepped in. In 2010, it passed the Sunshine Act, forcing drug companies to disclose every payment made to doctors. That created a public database, open payments, where anyone can look up how much their physician has received. The numbers are eye-opening. Some doctors earn 6 figures a year from pharma. But not every country tolerates this system. In much of Europe, medical reps are tightly regulated. They need a license just to work. They can't hand out gifts, not even a free pen. In many places, they can only meet doctors by appointment and only to discuss approved uses of a drug. Anything beyond that risks heavy fines or losing their license. In the US, the FDA decides which drugs can be approved, but insurance companies and their middlemen decide which ones patients can actually afford. Not in the illegal sense, but their interests are deeply intertwined. To get a drug covered, companies negotiate with insurers and their middlemen, known as pharmacy benefit managers or PBMs. The deal is simple. List the drug at a high price, then offer huge rebates in exchange for a place on the insurance list. On paper, those rebates are supposed to lower costs for patients, but the middlemen take a cut. The higher the list price, the bigger the rebate pool, and the more profit they make. Therefore, sometimes insurers prefer expensive drugs over cheaper ones, simply because they generate larger rebates. The patient rarely sees the benefit. Out-of-pocket costs stay high. And here's the biggest irony. Insurance premiums aren't set on the discounted price. They're based on the drug's full list price. Billions in rebates change hands behind the scenes. Yet patients still pay higher premiums up front. And often these contracts are exclusive. That means a cheaper competitor can be locked out. Not because it doesn't work, but because it didn't pay for access. So while it isn't collusion in the criminal sense, the system functions like a partnership, one where the winners are drug companies and insurers, and the losers are patients. Modern medicine has brought extraordinary progress, with new drugs saving and extending lives. Yet the systems that deliver them, patents, marketing, insurance, often serve profit as much as patients. The challenge is not to deny these advances, but to ask whether access and fairness can match the science itself. Thanks for watching. If the crossroads of faith, ancient secrets, innovation, and wealth intrigue you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. See you on the next journey beyond the visible.